Welcome to Born or Made, the podcast that dives deep into the heart of success and identity. Are the traits that define us as leaders ingrained from birth, or are they carved out throughout our experiences? Join your host, Anne-Marie LaTulip, as we ask these questions to some of the most insightful and inspiring entrepreneurs of our time. Each episode, we explore their journeys, the decisions that shaped them, and how they've molded their own paths to success. So whether you're an aspiring entrepreneur, a seasoned business owner, or simply curious about the interplay between nature and nurture in professional growth, you're in the right place. Get ready for compelling stories, transformative insights, and a new perspective on what it really takes to make it in the world of entrepreneurship.
Hello and welcome back to the Born or Made podcast. I'm your host, Anne-Marie LaTulip, and with me today I have the lovely Nicole Harvick, and I'm going to tell you just a little bit about her. Nicole Harvick is known as the forgiveness expert and quantum energy healer. Her mission is to assist people from all walks of identity and release negative emotions that are stuck inside their body, causing them sickness and emotional pain. Nicole, welcome.
Thank you so much. I'm glad to be here. This is going to be fun.
Yeah, so much of what you're doing is so new to me, and I don't know much about it at all. So I'm really excited to have you here so I can learn everything about all the different things you're doing. But before we dive into that, for anyone that might not be familiar with who you are, if you could just take a few minutes and kind of tell us a little bit about your journey, where you started, how you got here.
Absolutely. And you know, my catalyst is a very common one. It started with a divorce I went through back 10, 11 years ago. And it was it was very draining. It was very painful. And what happened was, the way I found out is I found out because my 11-year-old daughter's iPod Touch was synced with her dad's iPhone. So my baby, if you will, started getting all these messages and these texts and these pictures. So on top of me finding out, the way I found out was through her, and that was very traumatic also. So what that really led me on was a journey of knowing that I had to heal myself. You know, I knew if after a period of time, I'm condensing this obviously.
Sure.
After a period of time that I was becoming very sick, my hair was falling out. I was scratching myself until I bled, and I knew I needed to do something. So I went on a journey of knowing that I wanted to heal myself holistically, because I don't do allopathic doctors. I went to groups, I went to psychologists, and all you do is talk about it. Talk about it, and it wasn't doing me any good. So I'm like, okay, this isn't working. I'm going to have to take this on myself. And my biggest epiphany was during this time. My mother got sick with breast cancer, and she and my father had divorced like 20, 25 years earlier. And about 4 days before she died, she looked at me and she says, you know, he slept with all my friends. And I'm like, you know, because she had always said, you know, that was her motto, was I've forgiven him. Well, when you're 3 days away from passing away, and what you're thinking about is the man that you've been divorced from for 20 plus years cheating on you, not only didn't you forgive, you're still carrying that darkness, that trauma inside your body. Well, guess what it does? It makes you sick. It makes you physically ill. And it's called disease. What it is your body is at dis-ease with all the trauma you have stuck inside of you. And everything you have inside of you, eventually, if you don't get rid of it, will appear on the outside as a sickness. So when I looked at her, I said, no man's doing that to me. And boy, did I start a journey.
Wow. At that point, how long had it been since you divorced your husband by then?
No, I had not. It was like, found out he was cheating. My mom got sick. It was almost just so much that I had to put the divorce on hold, in terms of, I can't be doing these two things at once. It was too mentally draining. And so he was still in the picture. We were still living in the family home, albeit separately. But then after she passed away, and I realized that, you know, if I don't do something, I'm going to be, you know, my kids are going to be burying me in a shorter amount of time than I want to go.
Wow. So when you made that decision, how was it, or what was it that led you to the path that you're on now? Was it somebody you met, or how did that work?
I have been an intuitive, I'm going to say probably since birth. Is that's generally something that comes with you when you're born. I was that kid that had seances in my backyard in my playhouse when I was like 10. And I always had a huge interest in what goes on when you die. What are these voices talking to me? Why am I getting messages? And it didn't really scare me, but it didn't fit into mainstream, right?
Okay.
It's sometimes back when I was growing up, you didn't talk about things like that. So I went through my journey of, having a real estate career, having, being a mom, selling health insurance, very normal life path. But then when I started into this divorce and started into my healing, I look at a huge scope of circumstances. And my mom was on medication, which the side effects were worse than what she was trying to heal. I knew I would never go to big pharma to heal myself.
Okay.
So I've always been aware of natural healing. I've always been aware of herbs. I would be the one that if something's wrong with me, I'm going to find something that the earth provides to heal me. And then finally, I'm going to have to say, once I started this journey 10 years ago, I really started speaking out, but I'm really vocal now because I've had so many things happening in my life in terms of raising my frequency, raising my vibration, and understanding what quantum is, because we exist in many places at once. And, the quantum healing is the way I describe it for me and my clients. You have to go back into the past. You have to find your trauma, and trauma can be ancestral. It might not even be yours in terms of happening to you, but it can be passed down through the bloodlines, through the cellular memory. And so we have to go back and find that. And we can't just talk about it like with a psychologist. We have to physically release it. And that's when we can really start moving forward. And that's what I started doing. And when I started that path, I started raising not only my vibration, but my frequency. And it allowed me to step from a third dimensional existence of ego and, kind of unawareness. There's those, I'm just going to use this as an example, if you will, and this is no shame or blame, but the people get mired in their weekends being, some drinking, some football, some baseball, some sports, anything that keeps them out of going inside themselves. When you step out of that existence into a fifth dimensional existence, you become so much more aware of how you and the earth interact, how you can, that everything is alive, everything is made of energy. And so you become aware that there's different ways that you can help yourself other than allopathic medicine, other than big pharma, other than these, what they call traditional. It didn't used to be traditional. If you think about it, big pharma has only been around since the early 1920s. And what I practice has been around forever, since the beginning of time. People call it woo-woo. It's very ancient, very ancient. Sound healing, cellular memory healing, plant medicine, just you name it. That's how the natives, the American Indians, healed themselves from the land.
Right.
And that's what we need to do.
Wow, all of that is so interesting to me. I have a bunch of questions, if that's okay.
Okay, yeah, that's fine. That if that opened it up, let's go.
Yeah, no, absolutely, because I'm sure a lot of people listening are wondering the same things that I'm wondering. So you said first, and then you kind of explained a little bit, but I'd love you to dive a little deeper. And you said that we exist in many places, and then you mentioned the different dimensions. So is that what you meant by we exist in different places? And then also, can you explain what that means to be in a higher fifth dimension?
A fifth dimension is a consciousness, is what it is, a conscious awareness of that which other people maybe don't see. You're going to see things as living and breathing. You're going to see a tree differently. Everything is alive. Everything has a reason. You know, the reason the birds chirp very early, and sometimes you'll hear it before the sun comes up, what they're doing is they're signaling to the trees to wake up, to start providing oxygen. We are of one mind in this frequency. And when I talk about living in many different dimensions at once, I'm going to give you an example of what happened to me. And this started, I know I was probably about 7, because I was still sharing a bedroom with my brother. We had bunk beds. And I remember waking up one night, and I did a breath like this, and I pulled something off my neck. Something was choking me. So I've never, and I kid you not, I've never been able to wear turtlenecks. I have never been able to wear necklaces. I've never been able to have anything on my neck at all. And so it was when I was still married, and it was before I found all this out. We were upstairs. I had a loft upstairs with my ex-husband, and I was watching TV with him. And all of a sudden I gasped again. And when you see things like in another dimension, it's so quick. It's like a blink of an eye. And I knew in another life, in a higher dimension, I was being strangled. So it's the things like that. We do exist in many different places
At the same time.
at the same time. Yeah. And when you have a deja vu, and
Yeah.
you're like, and it's so quick, right? It's
Yeah.
so quick. And you're like, what was that? What was that? You're catching a glimpse, a feeling, or a thought of somewhere where you exist on another timeline.
That is so fascinating. You know what I always thought deja vu was, because I believed that before we come to Earth, we're here to learn.
Right.
And before we come here, we plan what we want to
script it out.
Right. What we want to achieve, what we want to do. And so I always thought that deja vu was remembering the planning of the journey.
Yeah. And I'm not saying it's not. It could very well be, but it can also be something that is happening somewhere in your field, but it's you, but it's a different you, is how I would explain it. It's pretty, in I've been crossing timelines for many, many years. And I had something happen today that I will share with you. And I don't really know how this happens, but it happens a lot to me. So I'm going down to my dad's for the week, and I'm going to spend Father's Day with him. So I'm like looking around like, okay, I need something to wear. So I find a pair of striped pants and a short sleeve white shirt. And they're wrinkled, so I'm going to throw them in the dryer, right? So 2 things. I have a pair of pants and a shirt. Throw them in the dryer, put it on 20 minutes. So when the 20-minute buzzer goes off, I go in to get those. The white shirt is not there. The white shirt is gone. What? And so I questioned myself. I'm like, did I put it down somewhere? But I know I did. And I know I had 2 things, because that was going to be my outfit for tomorrow. And this happens a lot. This happens a lot to me. Like I have been one. Here's a good one. My daughter went to the University of Hawaii her freshman year in college. So when she left, I thought, okay, good time to clear that nasty room out, because it was filthy. And so I worked on it all day long. The last thing I did is, she loves tennis shoes. So I lined up all her tennis shoes. And you know what? I looked around. Look at me. I cleaned it up. I was so proud. And so I shut the door and went about my business. The next morning, I woke up, and I always have tea. So I'm sitting there on the couch drinking my tea, and I look over by the door, and there's a pair of her Vans sitting by the door.
What?
And you can't, even I can't explain it, because I don't know exactly how it happened. So I called my friend Julia with that one, because this is like a couple years ago, before it really started happening to me. And I said, Julia, what the heck is going on? She goes, oh yeah. She says, when something like that happens, it's happening in another timeline, and it crossed over into your current one.
Wow. You know, if that had happened to most people, including myself, I might have thought, oh, there's a ghost here. Maybe there's a ghost playing tricks on me or something like that. But
Yeah.
that your explanation is far more cooler.
It's interesting. And like I say, it happens to me all the time. I'm not afraid of it or anything, but you know, it's when you think about that as a whole picture of how many are there of me, what am I doing, where do I live? And they talk about doppelgangers, you know, someone that looks just like you.
Yep.
Is that me? You know what I mean? There's so many explanations, and I can't like explain to you without a doubt, but I can tell you what's happened to me, which tells me it is in fact real.
Wow. So talk about a little bit about how vibrations play into this. You mentioned
Okay.
your higher vibrations.
Yes, and what you'll find when you start raising your vibration, and how you do this is with the food you eat. For me, and all these things were very organic that happened. About 10 years ago, I could no longer eat meat. I mean, just out of the blue, I'm like, oh man, I can't do, and I loved a rare steak, you
Yeah.
know. I'm
Yeah.
like, I can't eat meat anymore. It was too heavy for me. And then the next thing was alcohol. Could not take alcohol, any kind. You know, I loved a lemon drop, and I could not drink anymore. And then there was processed food that I remember walking in a store a couple years ago, and like maybe a Walmart or something that just has rows and rows and rows. And I saw it with different eyes. When you raise your vibration, you see through a different lens. It's, you know, when you understand wordology, realize is seeing with real eyes. And so I looked, I'm not, there's no food here. This is not food. Snacks, you know, potato chips, Cheetos, all those things. I thought, I can't eat this anymore. This is not healing my body. Food should be what we use to heal. It heals you or hurts you. And so I thought, I can't buy anything. I don't know what to buy. And so my whole diet started changing for the better. So vibration is that too is an awareness. For me, I have a very high frequency in my ears. It's not tinnitus. It'll shift frequency, and I'm used to it now. But when a person of higher vibration comes across someone with the lower vibration, and like I said, that would be, you know, the weekends partying, or a lot of anger, the ego is still very much attached in the third dimension. So when you raise your vibration, you come to a point of loving yourself, and you don't need that ego to protect you anymore, because the ego will lie to you. You know, you think you can do something, and the ego says, no, you can't. What are you thinking? You know, you've got that constant angel devil on your shoulder.
Sure. Yeah.
The devil is the ego. And so that was one of that just, and it's organic. It just, you don't need it anymore. But the interesting thing about that is people are like, well, what if you get in a fight with someone? And I don't, first of all, I don't allow myself to go there. So I don't put myself in a circumstance where there would be an argument. And I'm drawn to like kind of tracks. And so you are going to find that you're going to come in contact with people similar to you. And the only way I can describe it to people is you become invisible to someone with a lower vibration. Now, that's not to say they don't see me physically, they can, but because we don't match, you know, they're not interested in me. I have nothing to offer them, they have nothing to offer me. So I call it becoming invisible to those who I might have a conflict with. They don't want to deal with me, you know. So
Wow.
it's really interesting how that works. And then you if you've ever, when I talk about one consciousness, have you ever like gone to a store or driven through McDonald's? That was when I was eating crappy, but driven through, and all of a sudden you look behind you and like, all these cars are coming in. There's like 4 or 5 or 6 cars.
Yeah.
Well, that's the thinking. The thinking permeates the one mind. So it's really interesting when you think about that, how that works.
Wow, that is so interesting because yeah, that does happen. I've had that. Yeah,
Mhm.
either that or they
I know.
all pull in before me.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you want to be on the front of that one because if you're at McDonald's, it'll take forever.
That's so interesting. So none of this, well, you mentioned when you were younger. Let's go back. You mentioned when you
Okay.
were younger that you've always been an intuitive, and I read on your website, I believe that you are also an empath. So can
Yes.
you explain the difference, if there is one, between an intuitive and an empath?
Yes. An intuitive gets messages, hears messages and downloads, or can look at a person and they know something about them. I mean, just like I can look at someone and I'm like, I don't want to interact. They've had trauma or whatever it is. So we hear things, and that's clairaudience. That is my strongest one. Usually it comes through me, but every once in a while I will audible. It'll be audible. I'll hear like this all of a sudden. And the one that was so clear is I was in Washington, D.C. at the Lincoln Monument. And I heard my name 3 times out loud. And there was like really no one around at that time. And I was with my niece. I said, "Did you hear my name?" It's like, "No." 3 times, so loud. So I know there was a connection there with probably someone who had passed or who was no longer in the earth suit. So we get messages, we're told things, we feel things, we smell things, we can taste things. So that's going to be intuitive. Now, an empath is sensitive to other people's energies. Like if you're having a bad day and I walk in a room, I'm gonna know that either, maybe you're unhappy. I'm gonna know that you're sad. And until we learn what to do with that, we're going to take it in as ours. So before I learned to control or put kind of like a shield around me, I would go someplace and then I'd come home sad. And I would think about it. And then once I understood, that's not yours, you've taken someone else's. That's not your sadness, that was theirs. So that's what an empath is. So we have to be very careful, um, really guarding ourselves. And I'll be very, very honest. I don't struggle. I mean, I can talk to anybody. I don't struggle with a room like that. But when I leave it, however long I've been there, I have to have like double or triple time of silence and alone time to kind of get that. It's almost like, when a little kid gets excited and they're overwired or overworked, that's kind of how we feel. It's too much for our system to take. We like very calm interactions. So if I'm in a big room of people, especially if there's drinking, then I'm really going to need to be by myself, assimilate all that, and get rid of it. So those are really the two differences.
Wow, okay. And so was that happening even at a young age? All of this, your journey, you said, began after your divorce. But at an
Mhm.
early age, were you still experiencing the empath, the empathy? Is that how I would say that?
I was, but I didn't know what it was. So I like if I would be with a bunch of kids, it would be fun, but I always felt like a loner, I guess, or awkward. Sometimes it didn't show, but like one time and these were all my friends back in my day. It was like we all played together, we all played hide and seek, we rode our bikes everywhere. But I can remember one time there was a group of girls behind me, and I knew every single one of them, and I was walking ahead of them, and I didn't want. It was weird. I remember one of the girls sending someone up to walk with me because I was alone. But they all knew me, we all had fun, but I just didn't feel like I fit in. So
Right.
I kind of knew I was different. And then I used to read books by a lady named Jean Dixon, and she was a psychic a long time ago. My mom had the book, and I remember reading that at about age 8. And then there was one time that I really knew I could call things in, and there was a very thick votive candle, and it was a candle in there, and I lit the candle, and the glass holding it was like, I mean, it was thick. And I remember going into a bathroom by myself, lighting the candle, and saying that if there's anybody here, I want you to show me your presence. And after about 3 minutes, 4 minutes, that votive just exploded. And that scared me a little. I'll be very, very honest.
I
And so I
bet.
kind of, yeah, that I put that aside for a little bit because I'm like, oh man, yeah, there is stuff out there. And so I kind of, because you can't tell everyone those kind of experiences, people don't get it. I kind of just started putting it away and not, but I was still like I could look at someone and or feel that they were lying or that they didn't like me or something. So I knew intuitively, but I was never vocal about it when I was younger.
Right, right. So fascinating. So I'd love to hear then what your thoughts are um, about heaven. Do you believe that there's a heaven, or do you believe it's all just different dimensions? I'd love to hear your thoughts.
You know what? I think heaven and hell are made within us because we are so complete made in the eyes of God that we can create our mind creates whatever our mind thinks, projects into the one mind and creates it. So I believe that we create our heaven or hell on earth. I believe whatever we think, and I always say, as within, so without. And what that means is whatever you're internalizing, whatever you're thinking will come to fruition. So that can be either wonderful or that can be bad. But I also think because we talked about this being an earth school and we are here to learn. And my dad just can't understand this. He says, why would someone make themselves sick? Or why would someone have cancer? And I said, I can't really explain that except for the fact that maybe that is their lesson to learn. Maybe at the end of their life, they learn compassion. I can't speak for everyone. I can only speak for myself, but when I will never victimize myself. And I look back at my divorce and it was painful because, literally I found out from the time we were married, 25 years,
Wow.
the man, he was a narcissist and he was a cheater. And I look back on it and I reframed it. And I reframed it. It didn't happen to me, it happened for me. Because if I hadn't gone through that, like I did, learned my modalities, learned about myself, got, got the courage now. I always speak my truth. Whether anyone believes this or not, it is mine to own. So I will speak it. But, I wouldn't be as effective in helping people with their trauma. I wouldn't be as effective teaching people forgiveness. And I wouldn't know anything about raising my vibration or stepping out of a third dimensional existence had all that not happened for me.
That's so
Now,
interesting. And when
yeah,
you,
and if you take it as it happened to me, then you're going to victimize and martyr yourself. And then you're stuck in that third again. And I knew I didn't want that. So that's when I reframed it.
so it's almost like you're saying, because you touched on forgiveness, which we really haven't talked much about, because that's your jam. That's what you do, right?
It's,
So,
what I do, I will say that's kind of for a normal conversation, but everything's my jam.
okay.
Everything's spiritual, everything that's out there. If my TikTok, I talk about a lot of things that happen, so a lot of things that happen, like putting 2 items in my dryer today,
That
one's
is
gone.
bizarre. That
Yeah,
that is really, but
but it happened to me, so I talk about it now. I would have
yeah,
a year ago, I probably wouldn't have mentioned that.
it's so fascinating. But it's almost like you're saying that forgiveness, the because a lot of people have a hard time forgiving, right? But
Oh
we're not
yes.
actually forgiving for the other person, we're forgiving for ourselves. Would you agree?
That's the absolute truth. And you never have to see that person. You never have to interact with them again. And you do not have to tell them. And I always tell people forgiveness is actually very selfish because it's all for you. And people are like, well, they need to apologize or they need to earn it. It's like if they did something so bad that you need to forgive them, the hurt, the pain, the anger, whatever you have inside of you, you are going to wait for an apology that's never going to come because either they don't remember or they don't care. If they did it in the first place, chances are really good they don't care.
Right. Right.
So, do you want to carry a burden someone else placed on you? It's not worth it. That'll make you sick too.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's such an interesting perspective on forgiveness because a lot of people don't see it that way. So I hope,
No, no. And you know what? I was so surprised at how many women are against it. How they were like, because regardless, there's two people in a marriage, and I didn't do what he did, but he would always say, "Oh, I came before the kids." And after a while, I put all my attention into the kids because I just couldn't deal with him. But people would say, "Well, what did I do to, that someone has to forgive me?" Well, I don't know, but at one point in our life, we've all either hurt somebody, whether we mean to or not. We've all been mean to someone. We've maybe made fun of them. We've laughed at them. There are times that we have to look in the mirror and say, you know what? I forgive myself because I did that.
right. So true. So true. I love that so much because even just me, that gives me a new perspective on it. So that's so helpful. So I want to pivot for a minute and talk about the idea of the show, which is Born or Made and Born or Made entrepreneurs, right? So you
Mhm.
mentioned that prior to what you're doing now, that you had a real estate career, you had insurance selling career. So it sounds to me like you've always had an entrepreneurial spirit, and now it's just kind of taken a different direction. Is that fair to say?
I would say so. And I was never one of those people that like would step on others to get to the money. I was because I come from the greed is good era, and it was really ugly. And so yes, I did real estate sales. I mean, I got my license when I was like 24 because my dad was a contractor. And so I sold homes. I worked for auction houses because California's had its ups and downs. And then I did lending, and I absolutely loved lending. This may sound lazy, but when you're on the West Coast and the markets close at like 3 or 4, you're kind of done with work, and then you have weekends off because there's no markets on the weekend. So
I,
that I loved.
I never thought
And
about that. That's so
yeah,
true. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
it was great. And then I had my kids, and I worked with my first one, but when I got pregnant with my second one, um, my husband wanted me to stay home with them, not for the kids per se, but because all of his cronies had nannies and were staying home with the kids. So I was very blessed to be able to be with my children up until my youngest daughter was in 7th grade. And then I started selling health insurance. Hated it.
Oh, really?
Hated it.
Really?
Because you have to cold call. And in all honesty, I didn't see this as something that was beneficial for a lot of people in terms of deny, deny, deny. So I have to live with myself. I'm like the most honest person you'll ever meet. Not that I've never fibbed or lied or anything, but I'm like, I can't do that anymore. And I just took a leap of faith. After my mom passed away, I thought I've got to do my soul calling. I've got to do what my soul is telling me to do. And that was get immersed in helping people, forgiveness to healing, healing to raising your vibration to stepping into that beautiful fifth dimensional frequency. So it has been a weird journey, I guess.
Yeah, I would say I'd love to know how you came to the decision that now not only have you healed yourself, worked on yourself, but now you want to help others. What was that? What prompted you to make that decision?
Being a female and seeing all the pain, and not that men don't have pain. I am not saying that because I've worked with men as well. But to me, it was like after what I went through and the tearing down of me for 25 years, my ex, he never hit me. Nothing like that. But he would use his words and
Mm.
like, you're uneducated, you're untrained. Well, you can't do that. And so there was a diminishing of my self-esteem for so many years. When I started the healing journey and realized that with forgiveness and healing, it not immediately, but like it was baby steps to reclaim me. once I started reclaiming me and I looked around, it's like there's a lot of people that have been through what I have, and I can help them on this journey because I'm not saying I knew everything, but because I was empathic, because I was, intuitive, I could see things that others couldn't. And when I realized that, we can heal ourselves without drugs, our mind is so powerful. I mean, think about it. You cut your finger, you heal. You break a bone, it heals. Yeah, we need a doctor to cast it. And I thought, and I'm just going to be honest, at my age, if I can do it, anybody can. But sometimes you need you need to hold out that hand to someone that is afraid of the journey. They're afraid of looking at themselves. They're afraid of the mirror work, because there's a lot of mirror work in the comeback. You are worthy. You deserve this. You deserve to love yourself. You can take the self-care is very important. And those of us who are moms and wives and conditioned was like, oh, well, that's selfish. Self-love is not selfish.
No.
Caring for yourself is not selfish. And what I realized is that if my glass is half empty and I give that to someone, what do I have left? I'm out of fuel. So I recharge myself, I refuel myself, then I share it. I share it with whoever needs it. And then if it's taken that day, because you can feel depleted being an empath, you go right back to the quiet. You go right back to the meditation. You go right back to the sound healing. Whatever you need, and your body will know. Your body will tell you everything you need to know. And you just go back to taking care of you, because if you don't take care of you first, you're really not adequately taking care of anyone else. You're giving them a little bit, you could be giving them more.
Right. Right. That's such, I love that so much. So do you help people with meditation also?
Yeah, I've led a lot of meditation. Where I live, we have a facility where, usually for a couple months out of the year, I will lead meditation. And what I always do, because we are in a subconscious state, our subconscious mind takes over when we're in meditation. And if you've never heard this, 95% of what we do comes from our subconscious mind. And where we find that, I call it the in-between time. And that's before we wake up, like, right, we're not awake, but we're not asleep. And then at night, we're not asleep, but we're not awake. And that's when you want to train your mind. I'm a money magnet. I'm worthy. I deserve this. Everything about you, start using those mantras, the I am mantras. I am special. I do deserve this. And so in meditation, what I always do, whether I'm leading it or I'm working one-on-one with someone that we're doing healing, that's one of the things I always insert, is I want them to know how special they are. I want them to know they're worthy. And I'm very blessed because I can do it on the spot, because I'm downloaded what to say. So if I'm working on someone and we need to do a 15 or 20-minute meditation, I'm given the words that person needs to hear.
Wow.
Isn't
And
that something?
yeah, I mean, it just seems like such an incredible gift to be able
It's
to, you call
I'm
them
blessed.
downloads. I love that you call them downloads.
Yeah, and I tell people, if I tell them, so I'm like, look, I'm just the messenger. It could be my higher self, it could be guides, spirit, God, you name it. I accept it
Wow.
and I pass it on. You do what it would. If you don't want it, toss it. If it resonates, keep it, think about it, mull it over and see how you resonate with it.
Yeah. So you mentioned spirit, do you believe in guides, spirit guides?
Oh, absolutely. Now, the thing about spirit guides is we all have them. You can call them angels, guides, whatever you want. They can only intervene if we ask them. They're here for us, but because we are a planet and a person of free will, you have to invite them in, and you have to have clarity. What is it you want from them? Because they're not going to read your mind. Free will means you have to tell them. And you don't have, you can say it out loud, but you can also think it in your mind, because of that one mind collective and consciousness. Call them in. If you need them, call them in. Protection, you know, a new job. It can be anything, whatever you need, call them in. They're here to assist.
Interesting. Do you know who Sylvia Brown is?
Oh
Was
yeah, yeah, yeah,
that?
yeah. She was a she was a psychic. I
I
think she passed
love,
away a while.
yeah,
Yeah,
I love Sylvia Brown, and she talks about her spirit guide. I think her name was Sylvia or something. I forget, but she talks about her spirit guide. She,
yeah,
just some of the stuff that she talks about is a little bit kind of similar in terms of higher self and things like that. So it just made me think of her. But
yeah.
anyway, this has been so great. We're coming to the end here, but I want to ask you, is there anything new on the horizon for you? Anything coming up that you want to tell people?
Ooh, yeah. I just had a
Yay!
conversation with a gentleman in Peru today, and he does some oh gosh, what would you call them? Where you know, collective work with people, not a summit, but oh gosh, I'm blank all of a sudden.
Like a
But
live
anyway,
event or
live events, yeah, that not many of you. But what it is they do some plant medicine. Peru's open to that. And I've never done plant medicine. I've never done it, you know, but I have done psilocybin, and that opens you to a whole new world. But he talked about collaborating. I'm working on I'm working on how to forgive yourself. I think we need a forgiveness course, and how to raise your vibration course. So
love
I'm
it.
working on that, and I am working on a book. It started out called 7 Days, 7 Ways, and it was supposed to be about diet. But then my guides told me, no, it has to be for mind, body, and soul. So I do have a lot of things in the works.
That is fantastic. And you already wrote a book, right? Didn't
Yeah,
you?
I've written several. These have
Yeah.
all been chapter books, and I usually write about forgiveness. The last one I did, it was called the Change Book, which has been my favorite. Had everything done, getting ready to go to the editor, and my guys were like, "No, no." I heard the exact words, same content, same outcome. So, like, what do you want me to write about? I'm done. 3,000 words. I said, how to get to the fifth dimension, what it's like in the third, how you get to the fifth. So I kind of had to describe what it's like, how to get there, what it means. So it was really interesting the way they, you know, let me go through that whole exercise of writing the chapter, and then told me, but whatever, you know, I can't yell at them.
No, right? That's
Right.
that's funny. Um, I was going to ask you about there was one other thing that was on my mind and I forgot, so I'm going to go back and ask you about it.
Sure.
Something about Hawaiian Haboanana. What was that?
Okay. Ho'oponopono. And that is
Ho'oponopono. Yeah.
Ho'oponopono. And the Hawaiians are very spiritual, very sacred to them. It's a forgiveness. It's a forgiveness mantra. I love you. I'm sorry. Please forgive me and thank you. And it was gifted to me on one of my visits to the Hawaiian Islands. They told me, my guides told me, feed the stray. I thought the stray was a dog. So I carried like little treats for a dog. We climbed the Kilauea volcano while it was active, my daughter and I had food with me because it was going to be a long day. And so I had to make an offering to the island. They asked me to do that. And then a few steps later, after we got across this ravine on a wooden slat bridge, I looked into the foliage, and there was a little bird who had a hobbled, broken foot.
Oh,
And my daughter bent down to feed it. It was starving. And my guide said, that was your stray. So when I came back from the islands, I kept seeing this weird word everywhere, Ho'oponopono. And I'm like, what is that? And when I finally found out what it was, I started using it to forgive myself, to forgive others. And I just said those four things every night during the day, whenever I could think about it. And so it literally melts away anger, hate, animosity. And the Hawaiians use it because, you know, how some of us hold on to anger and hate forever. They're like,
mhm.
no, we all come in, we all talk about it, we release it, and we go on.
Wow. What were the words again?
I love you. I'm sorry. Please forgive me and thank you.
Oh, I love that. I
It's
love that.
beautiful. And,
Yeah,
and and you know, just so simple.
it is so simple.
We tend to complicate things we don't have to.
Yeah, that I love that so much. So, how can people find you? Of course, I'm going to put your information in the show notes, but if somebody's interested in learning more about what you're doing, how
You
would they
know what?
find you?
I made it very, very simple. Everything is in my name. TikTok, Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, Nicole Harvick. And then my website is nicoleharvick.com. So,
Okay.
you know, if you just Google my name, something's going to come up. But I do have, you know, all the social media, and then nicoleharvick.com is my website.
That's easy enough.
That's
And
easy purpose for me. So I didn't forget it when I'm super old.
and then finally, at the end of every podcast, I just fire off a couple of random questions so we can get to know another side of you. So if you're ready,
You
I'm going to
go.
ask you, if you had the opportunity to go to space and step on the moon, would you?
I've been to the moon.
What?
I've been to the dark side of the moon. I astral travel.
Okay, now that's a conversation for another podcast.
It is. It is.
Because
Yeah.
I want to know more about that.
We used to go into meditation, and during 2020, we'd go places like we'd astral project to Australia to help with the fires that were going on there. And my friend Julia asked our group one day, she says, "Where do you guys want to go?" And I said, "Julia, you always talk about the dark side of the moon. I want to go to the dark side of the moon." And so I did go to the dark side of the moon. During that, I saw like gray steel buildings, and I was going to look in because I knew it was like training places, and a little gray alien popped up right in front of my face. And the only thing I remember saying is, "You have no power over me," because we do have the power. They cannot intrude on us ever. We call the shots per se. And all of a sudden, Julia, it's usually like a 45-minute to an hour, and all of a sudden she was calling us back. She says, "Everybody," she says, "shatter your glass footprint, shatter your earthly glass footprint." And so we envision it, you know, we with our minds, we envision it. And so I started shattering everything behind me. And when we were back, she says, "Nicole, what happened?" And I said, "Well, I came face to face with the gray." I said, she goes, "I know. It was trying to attach to you and come back. I had to pull you guys, all of you, out really quick because they attach to you. They can't get here on their own because they have no soul. And so it was trying to attach to me to come with me
Wow.
back here." So yeah, I've been to the moon.
How did she know
She
to
can
pull you back?
see.
Oh, really?
She can see. She's like the most, oh my God, she was my mentor for years in Arizona. And there is no such thing as science fiction. It is all based on something that has happened in our universe. Star Wars, that was the Orion Wars of thousands and thousands and thousands of years ago.
Wow. Fascinating. Okay. Well, no one's ever answered it that way before, I'll tell you that. Okay. So given the opportunity to have dinner with anyone, alive or dead, who would you choose?
You know, it would be Dolores Cannon. I don't know if you've heard of her, but she many years ago, she would hypnotize people, and that's how she learned about other lives. She learned through people. I don't know if you've ever heard of Nostradamus. She's actually had conversations with him through hypnosis. You would love her. I would sit down and talk to Dolores Cannon, most definitely.
Okay. Awesome. And then finally, what book has inspired you most in your life?
That's really easy. And I just wrote a chapter in a book about the book I read. It's The Power of the Subconscious Mind. I'm trying to think of the name.
I know it. I think I have it actually. I haven't read
Yeah,
it yet, but
that changed my mind, and that helped me understand that my mind creates my reality, good or bad. The power of the subconscious mind.
interesting. All right. Well, there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Nicole Harvick. This was such an awesome interview, and I learned so much. And yeah, definitely part 2 coming up sometime.
Okay, I'm in. I'm in if you're in. There's more. Trust me.
I'm sure. I'm sure. All right, Nicole, thank you so much for coming on.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.